Making governments, making people, making everyone aware how important it is, because it seems like a luxury. People think, oh, well, you know, if we don't fix that object or that painting, or it'll last, we'll do it next year. And of course, if you say that too long, it won't last, and it won't be there next year. And I think that's the pressure we have to put on if we value things, whatever they are, our cultural history, our material history, as it were, of our cultural history. We have to actually then campaign, train more people, raise the status of the profession, publish, research. So there are lots of technical challenges to deal with climate and the materials you use and things, but those will be solved. There's a lot of researchers out there, there's a lot of very clever people working in the field across the world. ICOMCC, lots of organisations get together and discuss these things. Huge advances have been made. But if no one's going to pay for it or commission it, then it's no use. So I think conservation has to be put higher on the agenda, and it has to be shown to be as valuable as curatorship and as valuable as all the other things that go with museums. And as a totality, I think that's what you call a smart museum. It covers all the bases.
Yes, while on that, I was just wondering, this is something that we are looking at the possibility of currently, and I guess museums all over the world is that, you know, there may be a time, I hope not, I hope that day never comes, but there may be a possible doomsday at some point when we won't have government funding in cultural institutions anymore. And the United States have this cultural endowment for public institutions. Most of the libraries, universities, museums, most of all, have this cultural endowment. This is something that we are looking at the possibilities of. Now, you have worked across the board in museums in Britain, in the Royal Collection, now in a major university museum. You know, can you tell us a bit about this? How is this a factor, the cultural endowment, is this a factor in the British museum profession at all? Does, you know, as a museum attached to one of the world's premier universities, does it help to have a large alumni base? Yes, I mean, how does Britain fare in this scenario compared to the US, and what lessons can we learn in India?
It's a very big question. I'll try and make a brief answer. Yes, we are in a situation where the government doesn't fund museums particularly. It funds the big nationals, but it's been cutting the funding. And museums like university museums only get maybe a quarter of our funding from government, and the universities often take us a bit for granted as well. So there is a lot of work in trying to fundraise from business, from rich individuals, from benefactors, endowments. It's a full-time job for lots of people. You need to have a department to do it, of course. So you've got to invest in staff who can then begin to court, as it were, your benefactors. And it takes a long time, and Britain's not very used to it, to be honest. So as the government cuts have been coming in over the last few years, but a lot of museums have been very desperate. And it's not a bad idea to prepare for this possible doomsday sooner rather than later by getting friends of the museum, associations of supporters. Obviously, exhibitions in the past have been sponsored, because an exhibition is a high-profile event. You can put your name on it, your company's name, you get a lot of coverage, as it were. But the backstage stuff doesn't get so easily endowed, and that's the problem. That is another problem why you have to publicise what you do all the time, so that people realise, and also that your supporters are willing to put their money behind you in the knowledge that they will be recognised as well. Some obviously supporters want to do it anonymously for the good of the museum, and that's even better. But the real world is that a lot of people want something back. And museums are a wonderful showcase. They really are. A lot of institutions wish to be associated with a successful museum. So if you've got a big footfall, as you have, and if you've got a fantastic building and a fantastic collection, and you just need to represent some galleries, then that's where you want to look for money to help you, I suspect, in the future, if the government doesn't pay up. Now, you're very lucky, I think, that the government does support these institutions. But as you say, you're also vulnerable to any change in policy. But I think it's very important. I mean, it would be wonderful if everything... I mean, in Britain, museums are free, of course. That's the other fact I have to mention. Most countries charge for their museums, a small amount or a large amount. Britain has a policy of never charging unless it's a private museum. And that's quite hard, because that means your income stream has to be then looking at your gift shop, your events, your sponsorship, you can't just put the price up when people come through the door. That is an article of faith in the British museums at the moment, and they've fought madly against government suggestions that, oh, well, you could charge a little bit, you know, or whatever. So that is, if you believe that the smart city has a museum that everyone can access, you've got to keep them either very cheap or free. It seems to me, and if you start charging 10 or 15 pounds, as it might be in England, to go into something, you're going to put a lot of people off, and those people are the people who might not visit a museum normally, and those are the people you want to come in to widen the base of your supporters. So it's a vicious circle, that one, if you're not careful. I think it's a very big question, and I think obviously policymakers have to look into it, and I hope it doesn't come soon, that moment, but be prepared.
So do we. Thank